Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, I am going to be talking about The Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson, which is book 1 in the Era 2 Mistborn series. I almost wanted to say trilogy because I'm used to saying Mistborn trilogy, but there are 4 books, so but I'm doing this as a reread before the 4th book comes out because I originally read this series at release, so it's been some time. It's been almost 10 years since this came out. In March, it's 10 years, just for the record, so it doesn't feel like it came out that long ago, but it did. And so I didn't remember a lot about it, and so I wanted to do this video to kind of talk through. This is going to be spoiler-filled, and it'll be part kind of spoiler discussion, part summary of what happened, which will be good to leave for myself. It's not going to be as detailed as the Stormlight summaries I did, where I actually went chapter by chapter, because there was a ton more information there, but that's kind of what this is going to be. So going through with this, and like I said, it's a lot of things that I didn't remember. So if you haven't read it, I don't recommend watching this because there are going to be spoilers, and I'm just going to kind of go between spoiler, non-spoiler, whatever, talking through this, so you have been warned. So let's talk about The Alloy of Law, because the first thing that stood out is I enjoyed this more than I remember enjoying it the first time I read it. I feel like when I read it the first time, just Era 1 was too fresh in my mind. I prefer that era for fantasy for the most part, although I have read a lot of other stuff in different eras, and so I've grown, but especially when I originally read this that long ago, I just felt like I didn't care for the setting quite as much, or, you know, the characters. It just, I wasn't as into like the whole Western thing, but I enjoyed this a lot more than I remembered enjoying it. And also, like, the big thing I remembered is the whole train robbery plot. I did not remember a lot of the other stuff. Like, this is train robbery. I remember, like, one specific thing about the second book, and then I remember more about the third book because I've read that the most recently. But by the time I read the third book, I feel like I had not really fully remembered a lot of things that happened. So I always plan to actually reread this before really judging it. Because I don't remember being the biggest fan, but also I read them at release, which is not great. Usually I would have reread, but like I said, I wasn't crazy about the first book the first time I read it, so I didn't decide to reread when the new books came out, but I wanted to make sure I did that this time. So there is a lot more than just the train thing, and you know, the base plot here, of course, you have Waxillium, will concede, really stupid name, just to have a Wax Wayne pun. Totally get it. It is dumb. I'm not going to defend that. But so Wax, who has been living out on the roughs for years as a lawman, kind of in a Wild West, you know, sheriff type thing, it has to come back to the city when his uncle, who is the lord of his house, dies, and he has to kind of take over. And then we introduce the plot line, the Vanishers, who are stealing the train cargo. They start kidnapping people, and it's Wax trying to balance his new life and his new responsibilities with wanting to get involved and get this all figured out. And so the setup, I think, works. I originally, too, I think I was expecting it to be a lot more of, like, the actual Western part, especially because, like, when you look at the cover, I guess it's technically in a city, but with, like, the color scheme makes it look like it's dust, so I think I was expecting more like a Wild West thing, too, where most of this actually does take place in the city. But there's a lot of interesting things here, and it's explored more later too, which is why I think after thinking about it more and exploring it more in the other books, I appreciated this one a little bit more. But seeing the differences in the world and how things have turned out, because this takes place, I think, like 300 years after Era 1. Don't quote me on that, I could be wrong, but that's what I'm recalling is 300 years. And so seeing how things have changed, you know, obviously technology's had some updates. We have guns, we have electricity. Granted, just the base idea of guns and, you know, allomancy works out pretty well. But we have a lot going on there with it. And this sets up the big plot line, which is something I could mostly forgotten about by the time we got to Bands of Mourning originally, where we have this organization called the Set, who they were the ones funding and like secretly manipulating the Vanishers, as they're called, which are led by Miles, who was a lawkeeper in the Roughs along with Wax. And he's got his own things going on as well too. But so we get with kind of the plot lines that are set up is, you know, we don't really find out a lot about the Set in this book. We do find out that Mr. Suit is actually Wax's uncle, who's been faked his own death so he could keep doing stuff from the shadows. But we also get some like brief comments from Miles at the end talking about Trell and like some sort of other religion and another like metal and just like the way things are described to tell us there's more going on there as well. So we have this organization. It's very powerful. It is trying to take over, political control or get money and all that kind of thing going on. And then we have potentially this other religious group. So those are the two kind of bad guys that are set up with this. And then we spend a lot of time with Marcy in this one, who is an aspiring to work in the law. I think she wants to be like a lawyer or something, is what it is. But I spent a lot of time with her, not as much with Steris, but we get more Steris in the other books, I remember. So we get more of everybody in the other characters. This focuses mostly on Wax. We get a little bit of Wayne too, but the other characters get a lot more development in the later books. I do remember that much. So there's more here, but I think it overall works pretty well. To introduce the world and kind of set up these bigger plot lines that are going on with that. So those are kind of the core things. We spend some time too exploring the different. A lot of it I feel like is to show the different ways Allomancy works, because we find out here that just because Allomancy is genetic, it's kind of started to die off, so to speak. There's no such thing really as like a full Mistborn anymore, or even a full Feruchemist. It's instead, you usually just have Mistings, or I think Fairings is what the Feruchemists are called. But you have that, and then some people are Twinborn, because that's another thing we get as kind of some exposition here, is we find out that there since the events of Era 1, there's the Terrace and the people of Elendil, like they've intermarried. Even there are people who have Kolos blood, so like all of these different groups have intermarried and mingled, and so you have the people like Wax and Wayne and Miles, for that matter, who are Twinborn, and so they have a allomantic ability and a feruchemical ability, and that's pretty rare, we find out. And I think we get more on that later, but it's kind of that setup. And so it's interesting, too, to see how using the two abilities together work. And we also get to see more of some abilities that we did not see because they're from the alloys that weren't discovered in Era 1. And so since there were more metals, we get to see that kind of thing, like Wayne's speed bubble. We get to see like the healing, I think, is something, and like Wax with being a coin shot. Also something we've seen in like the weight thing. We got to see a lot of the different base powers of Allomancy in Era 1, as well as the feruchemical powers as well. But we get to see more just the interaction of the two, which isn't something we got a ton of in Era 1, so that part I did find interesting. And there's the different kind of references, especially to the different types of religions as well, like the Church of the Survivor. There are people who do follow Harmony, even though he's apparently told them not to, that kind of thing. So just seeing how a world changes while knowing the behind-the-scenes things, I think work. So things that I still do feel, and I know it starts to ramp up, and I think book 4 of the series is really going to ramp up a lot more, but I think for me, part of where this originally fell flat is just with Mistborn Era 1, the stakes were so much higher. Even in the first book, the stakes were so much higher, and then they just got even higher and just skyrocketed as things went on. And this felt a lot more low stakes. We're dealing with a train robbery. There are bigger things going on, but, evil, wealthy organization and group of brigands. It's just the stakes were a little bit lower. And so I feel like it takes longer for the stakes to get higher in this series, which is okay, because this was originally just kind of something he was writing. It wasn't originally planned. And so I think it makes sense that this is just more, we're going to tell some stories and show you what it's like. And so I feel like, though, I was able to just appreciate it for what it is, versus originally reading it expecting it to be something it wasn't, and so that's helped as well. So overall, I think this works. I ended up because I don't think I ever really rated it. I didn't used to read or use Goodreads very much back in the day, but so overall I ended up giving this a 4 stars. Upon my reread. I completely forgot to mention, was not really a fan of the audio on this one. This is the first Kramer that I really didn't care for that much. I got used to it and it was fine by the end of it, but early on especially, I'm just like, ooh, that's weird. Like the voice for Wayne and some of the other things, but I got used to it and it was fine. But I figured I'd mention that just because I know a lot of people apparently don't like Michael Kramer. I've always, for the most part, enjoyed him. Granted, I've only been listening to audio for like less than a year, so I haven't done a lot, but I've had a lot of Kramer in that time doing Wheel of Time and also some other books that he narrated, so I've been generally fine with him and whatnot, but apparently people don't like. But yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan of the audio here, but especially with doing a reread, it was just quicker to do it that way, because I meant to start this reread much sooner and did not quite get to it. But that's kind of where I am on this book. Like I said, I know I didn't do like a in-depth summary by any means, because that's not really what this video is going to be. But that's kind of the base thing is being set up. I'll do a similar video probably for books 2 and 3, which I do still plan to get to before book 4 comes out. And then I'll be reading book 4 pretty much immediately once I get it. And then doing probably a non-spoiler and spoiler review for that one. So we'll be going that route from there. But let me know your thoughts on this too. I know like a lot of people are rereading this right now, and I've seen some people in Discord talk about it. But let me know your thoughts on this. If you were doing a reread, or just if you just read it for the first time maybe and finished it as well, definitely let me know. Interested to hear what people think about it. So let me know in the comments down below. Make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the link in the description, as always, for the Wizardly Duo Discord if you want to chat books, whether this book, other books, any books, really anything at all. It is a lot of fun and we would love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.